The dice have been rolled. The deck has been built. The workers have been placed. Here on the Rainbow Connection podcast, I'm your host, Allison Hadley, and with me today are Sylvia and Kaia. So if I get you two to introduce yourselves, just like name, pronouns, a little bit about yourself that you're comfortable sharing, and I like a question to start off. So we'll go with, like, what was your favorite childhood board game or your first favorite board game that you remember?
Do you want to go first, Kaia?
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Kaia Heroux. My pronouns are she, her. My first board game that I really got into was probably Risk. And a little bit of Monopoly, but mostly like I played a lot of Risk. I was a Risk teen.
Was there anything particular that drew you to Risk?
I think I liked the fact that there was a lot more strategy to it than a lot of other games. And I liked the kind of like grand strategy aspect of it, which has like really informed my like current board game tastes for sure.
Oh, fair.
Nice. My name is Sylvia Dougles. My pronouns are they and she. My board game was probably a lot of Clue. I loved the mystery. I loved how each time you played it, it was different. I liked how it was a little bit of like social deduction as well. So yeah, I played a lot of Clue as a kid.
Okay, awesome. Those great places to start and a couple classics for sure. So I just want, along those lines, I think something to be interesting is it can be like during your formative years or as an adult, but would you say there's any surprising life lessons that you've got from board games where you just walked in and you weren't suspecting, then you walk away like, oh, geez, I just learned something?
That's a very deep question to start.
I'm like, yeah, sometimes we just dive right in.
Yeah, how have board games changed your life?
Like off camera, just before starting, we were talking about the abyss. So I'm like, I was just kind of in that abyss mindset, I guess. I feel like I can go first.
Sure.
'Cause
Absolutely.
I've got one here. I can hijack things a bit because it's my show.
That's great.
So for me, like, we didn't do a lot of family things together as a family, but one of the things that we did do was Scrabble. Like, I have a family of word nerds, and it was a way to assert your dominance over the other people.
This also explains your like superiority in haikus.
I am very good at haikus, and thank you.
Yes.
I also write a pretty good sonnet.
It's true.
But so a lot of people, with parents and grandparents, there's the tendency to like let the child win, help them build confidence and that sort of thing, right? My family was not like that. It was this is where you tell the other family members that you're smarter than them. And the sort of bar none the champion in my family was my grandma Lillian. And the lesson I took from that, more so in hindsight, is that a lot of the times, like, the conditioning that we're fed is, sort of as you age, you lose your usefulness, whether or not anything happens with your brain, like there's any sort of dementia or things studied in, like, so it's like, oh yeah, you don't want to ask the old person for anything because what can they do? They're old. Like, there's a lot of that, ageist stuff that's going on, and especially when I was growing up, like a while ago, it was very prevalent, and it was just that she was still so sharp, and she would not hesitate to like smack around a 9-year-old child, but with words. And it's like, okay, no, like
Get it, Grandma.
Yeah, no, she was pretty much undefeated. And if anyone ever beat her, it was like we were talking about it for weeks. It'd be like, oh wow, I can't believe that Lillian lost that one. Oh. She must have just had like really bad letters because like otherwise she wouldn't. And I just thought it was really sort of aspirational that and it's actually helped me like not fear aging as well. That I'm like, I can still potentially be an older person and have use. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, but just like I said, growing up in the 80s, that was the whole thing, is like, once you get to a certain age, then you're kind of put out to pasture. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you don't have to be put out to pasture.
Mm-hmm. Our wordsmithing skills for years.
Right?
Very cool.
Yeah.
So do either of you have one, or is that just a story I'm going on for nothing about?
I think something like later, when I discovered more cooperative games, I learned how much I really liked those, because I really liked the problem solving aspect of doing it together with people, and how good that is like, I don't know how to explain it, that like coming together around the table and collectively solving a problem together, and how that's so escapist and ultimately like really a wonderful salve for your mental health, as like because a lot of like especially nerdy hobbies are very a lot of them are very like individual. Like if you're playing video games, or if you're a writer, or
building Gundams,
or
whatever, right?
building models, like they're all these very solitary activities, or watching your favorite show over and over. They can be social, but often you can also do them alone. But then the aspect of the cooperation aspect, I thought was really profound in gaming. Like, and that wasn't like with classic games; they were all competitive.
Yeah,
like,
co-op games weren't an option.
Yeah, like Life, Sorry, Clue, Monopoly, Risk. It was all competitive. And I didn't grow up a particularly competitive person. I just wanted to like be in the world, and board games can offer that. And I think co-op games are really good.
I think it's interesting. We'll probably get back to this later, because like I think this is part of a bigger conversation as well. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, it's when it comes to, a lot of them kind of come from a very Western capitalist mindset, where it's like, okay, you've got to get ahead and you've got to stomp on everyone else together, and that's kind of just the rule for most of these games that we all grew up and loved, and that have been, culturally relevant for generations, right? So.
And I've had some really cool experiences teaching like semi-cooperative games to like youth and stuff. Specifically this game called Wolves, it's semi-cooperative. You have your like village. It's like an indigenous design game. You have your village that you are trying to provide the basic necessities for, which is corn, fish, and bison. And everybody is their own village, and you win or lose the game together, but one person will get to come out a little bit on top. But if you don't work together, and if you don't help each other, like if I have more bison than I need, I can gift that to another player who has less bison. And so you're kind of like winning and losing together. And watching youth, like 16-year-old kids coming in to do these like workshops and stuff, watching them like realize like, oh, this is like what community is about. It was like really like cool to see live.
And being like sort of like semi-cooperative, then you get kind of like, oh, I'm gonna have the best teamwork.
Totally.
and how can that not build a more like compassionate adult when you grow up, and you're like, you have that ingrained into you. Like for me, it was hyper competitive with words. Like I think that's a little better message for kids to grow up with. And,
yeah, absolutely. And like your individual score in this game is like directly tied to how much you help other people, which is so cool.
Yeah. So I think that's actually, on both of these things, a way we can kind of morph the conversation a bit is when it comes to like board games as community building tools, and how it can be, bring people together and foster understanding and stuff like that. And but I think first we'll say is how is it when it comes to being a queer or trans gamer in like sort of mainstream gaming society versus like a queer space? Like, what do those look like, and what are the fundamental differences you find between those two spaces?
Ooh, so much.
I find that I see the difference between those things quite often. Like, I run gaming events every week. I do one that is queer specific and one that is not queer specific. But we have a
plug it. Where do you do it?
I do it at Palmetto Way Games. It is on Alberta Ave. It is a wonderful store. It's Indigenous owned, very like curated selection of like locally made, Indigenous made, and queer made games. It's great. I do Thursday queer nights and Saturday general drop-ins, and seeing the difference in those crowds and the difference in the vibe, even when the crowd is the same, is like really, really interesting. Like on queer nights, we see like a very, very like fun and accepting just by default crowd and feeling and vibe. And then on the Saturday general drop-ins, when we have non-queer people coming but still a lot of queer people, then we see us having to remind people about pronouns and stuff like that, and seeing how that's not an issue whatsoever when we're in the queer nights, but something that we have to be a bit more mindful about when we're doing the Saturday general drop-ins is like, I think really telling between just like the acceptance between those communities and stuff.
And so before you pop in, like you have experience sort of leading game nights and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I do. So I'm a co-founder of a group called Queer Joy Yeg. We do all kinds of events, but a really important thing that we kind of identified was a need for what we call where the quiet queers are. So having events that aren't focused around like nightlife and alcohol and parties, things that are during the day, that are quiet and not overstimulating. And so we started in, I don't remember when we started this. We started the Short Rest Club, and it's like a casual space for both like people doing crafts or playing board games, because parallel play and parallel activities are an awesome cozy space. We just
a very queer way of doing things as well.
Yeah, exactly, and just making it really inclusive and like a soft environment that like we get together in a public space, be it at a gaming store or at a cafe or up until recently at the Landing here at the U of A. Take up space together, parallel play, parallel activities, lots of like cozy board games, because there was kind of a need in the community for that softer space to spend time together around hobbies. And then Queer Joy Yeg also hosts one of the queer nights at Palmetto Way, and it's awesome. And it's great to have kind of different access points around the city so people can enjoy those spaces together. Yeah, and then just having a specifically queer space, like I agree, like one as a queer person, but also like my friends that come out to the events, it's just so much easier to be in spaces with other queer folks where
there's less masking, there's less explanations, there's
exactly
less sort of anxiety that something's probably going to go wrong at some point here, right? Like it's
like all of that stuff, but definitely I think the masking is one of the biggest things, or that in a lot of like non-queer spaces, whether people are well-meaning or not, there's just so many assumptions made based on gender presentation, what have you, whereas I find in queer spaces, people are so much more genuinely curious about you, and they make less assumptions about you before talking to you, and being kind, being curious, asking questions, and you feel like they're actually trying to get to know you rather than looking at you and being like, I know what you're all about. So I just really enjoy those spaces.
Yeah, excellent. Like you can definitely see the need for that, as to, you want people to be comfortable, you want people to have fun, and this, sometimes it helps if the situation's a little different from just, your general board gaming atmosphere, right? Yeah,
like I played a lot of games, all kinds of games, ranging from like tabletop role-playing games to board games. Like my friend has an icebreaker question that is, if a 4-year-old followed you around and repeated something you say most often, what would it be? And mine that I came up with was, do you want to play a game? Because I say it all the time.
That's adorable.
At least every day I'm asking someone to play a game. And so I spent a lot of time in high school, especially in being in very like masculine spaces. And a lot of them were really great and really fun. I got introduced to some of my favorite hobbies through those spaces, but they were also really challenging. A lot of condescension, a lot of like competitiveness in like a weird, like unnecessary way of like putting you down for no reason, making assumptions about you, derogatory comments, that kind of thing. So that's another big difference, is knowing that you're not going to have to walk into a really masculine space that is going to be condescending, think you're dumb, you don't know how to play heavy strategy games, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I know I kind of, got my defenses up right away if I'm going into one of those type of spaces, whereas like, it's just nice to relax and, feel seen and understood, right? And understood, and especially if you're learning like a dense strategy game or something like that, then your brain's not like in defensive mode. You can actually learn all those rules, and you can figure out the complicated game mechanics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like the first time I learned how to play Terraforming Mars was with a group of men. Again, really nice people that I enjoy playing games with, but like they did not teach me how to play the game. They're like, you'll just figure it out. And I was like,
classic.
I was like, okie doke. And I'm like, I play a lot of games. I can probably figure this out. But that's a pretty dense game. And there's like some long-term strategy and like there's long-term consequences of your choices and that kind of thing. It's one of my favorite games now that I learned how to play it properly. So even being in spaces like I find myself teaching a lot of board games. I'm sure you do too with like youth workshops and things. It's even in queer spaces, the way we teach games, I think is more inclusive, and it makes a huge difference.
So what are some of the things you keep in mind when you're trying to teach games then? Because you don't want to provide that experience like when you started playing Terraforming Mars, but what are things you try to keep in mind when you do?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the game to an extent. I find often starting with like an accessible point is starting with the theme, kind of like how Kaia was explaining the game Wolves. Like that the theme of the game will make the mechanics make sense if it's a well-made game. So sticking with the theme, and so that when you're learning the rules, you have like story context for why the game works the way it is. I find that a really good way of explaining games. I also find starting with like, what are the victory conditions? So these are the 3 ways to win, and then go back to the beginning and explain the mechanics.
That's a good way to do it, because then you're explaining the rules and you're like, oh, I can see, because that's how I get the victory points, as opposed to just doing that like, okay, so why am I doing this stuff again?
Yeah.
And then you find out at the end. Like, I think that's a great approach for it.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of taking a step-by-step approach and then playing a few open hand rounds where you're not just thrown into it. It's like, let's play an open hand round where the players that are more experienced, their turn will go first, and I'll explain my thinking and strategy as I'm playing it, and then reset and actually start the game. That's kind of basic.
I find that really helpful as well, sort of like the open hand style is big, and this is why I'm choosing to do this here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I find too that like I will often offer like multiple modes of learning too. Like if somebody's like, yeah, if you talk to me and just like explain the rules to me, it's going to go completely over my head and I'm not going to like absorb that information. It's like, okay, I can show you a video on YouTube where they can like walk you through it a little bit more. That might be a little bit more engaging. Or I might go through that game like a couple quick rounds with that person. Where we do just kind of like play the game a little bit and then reset. But yeah, like giving multiple options I think is really, really big too.
And yeah, YouTube is amazing for
I love YouTube.
Game walkthroughs.
I always watch, like, even if I'm teaching a game that I know how to play but I haven't played in a while, I always just kind of refresh. So I'm like, okay. And then even to know like, okay, this is how they're explaining things. And they're a popular gaming channel, so it must be working for people, right? Like,
Totally.
Because there's times where, I've been taught games for my first time, and they're not even complicated games, like Seven Wonders, which I love, and it's not super complicated game mechanics. There's like things going on.
Yeah.
But if you just like read me the card that comes with it, I'm like, okay, and what?
Yeah, it's true. Some of those rule books are so intimidating.
Yeah.
Like just walls of text, and like the art of game design is also the art of like how you lay out your rules to make it comprehensible for a new player. It's a very important skill.
Yeah.
Because honestly, with a lot of the instruction manuals and stuff like that, they're, the designers, especially with like indie games and stuff like that, they need to know everything that's going on in my brain as I'm designing this game. And is that important to the game mechanics, or does the progression make sense, or is it just like you needing to share your thoughts with the world?
Yeah.
This is why I love a reference card.
Yes.
I love a reference card. I love when there's like player aids. Like that is the best, because I will just watch a video. Like a 20-minute video of how to play, and then I'll have my little player aid on the table in front of me. And if I need to know anything more intense, then I can dig into the rule book and find it. But usually that's like pretty good to start.
Totally.
Nice.
Love a good player aid.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Like, especially if it's a specific card. I don't like it when it's like a page in the book.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not like right at the very end. Like, it's like a few pages from the like.
Yeah,
it's
each
like, make
player
this
should get their
easy.
own player aid.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
like we love clear iconography. It's really fun because it's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really good for neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to ask, as people who host like queer game nights and stuff like that, do you find that there's trends in certain types of games that people are drawn to more than others? Like, if you're, I'm not saying you have to compare to what like cisgender hetero people like playing, and are these compare these graphs, but are there any sort of are there waves or anything? Like, what sort of games do our folks really liking to play right now?
Yeah, I find it can be so different depending on the event that I'm running. Like, I find even for the queer nights, we have other organizations that will come and like Queer Joy Egg coming and like sponsoring a game night. And even just the crowds that are drawn in from those other organizations can have such different genres or types of games they want to play. For instance, the first one, like the first queer night of every month, is sponsored by the Edmonton Lesbian Event Network, and they'll come and it'll just be like 30 lesbians that all want to play party games, and it's awesome and it's so
That sounds
fun.
incredible. Yeah.
I love that so
It's such a
much.
good time.
I love that so
It's
much.
truly such a good time. And then like it'll be the next
So
week.
before we move on, you can go
Yeah.
on to the next week, but I'm like, okay, what would you say is the top lesbian party game? Because I think we need to break this story.
Yes.
The one that I don't know if this is the top lesbian party game, but it's the one that I've been really pushing is Snake Oil, and people seem to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Because it's Snake Oil is like you have a hand of cards. In your hand of cards, they all just have different words, and you have to take 2 cards and make a product that like involves those 2 cards, and then you have to pitch that product to the judge. And then the judge picks whoever has the best product. And so it's like a fun party game that relies a lot more on creativity. So it's a very good time.
And we've played that before, and it's a blast. Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
That's
it is
great.
very good.
Lesbians.
Okay, so the next one, if you want to run through the program a bit, essentially.
Yeah, so then the next week we will have like kind of just the like regular crowd that comes to most of the events at the store, and they want to play things that are like a little bit more complex, because then we'll have like a little less people. They won't be 30 lesbians, it'll be like 10. So then we will like break into 2 tables of playing something a little bit more with like a little bit more depth to it. And often that ends up being like 7 Wonders you talked about earlier. That being able to play 7 players has come in handy many, many times.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I've never played with 7, but that'd be amazing.
It is a very good time. Yeah. We often end up with like exactly 7 people, and it's like, well, I guess we're playing 7 Wonders.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then to even go further with that, on general drop-in days, which is a 5-hour event instead of a 3-hour event, then we have like way, way more in-depth games getting played on those nights. Like we'll play like Root or like something more intense like that that will take a few hours to play.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or insights?
Well, with the event that we started, like with Short Rest Club, the whole kind of like focus of it was having like a cozy space, and so it is a lot of like cozy games. So they're more cooperative, like less competitive, more like lighter rules, complexity, but things like Canvas is a good one. You have these transparent cards, and you're just like putting together a painting, and you have to like present it and tell a story about it. And it's really fun, but there's really unique mechanics, and it's kind of like color and shape based, and you're trying to meet certain conditions to have like the best painting. Or things like Calico, what are some other cozy games? I'm not thinking. Fit to Print is so cute.
Oh, I love that one.
Oh, you're just a little critter that works at a news desk, and you have to put together your newspaper for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the Friday paper is the smallest, and the Sunday paper is like real big. You have lots of space, and you'll have different cards that dictate different conditions. Again, like you can't have two advertisements touching each other, or you have to have a happiness rating of a certain amount. And it is so cute, and it's like it's more about spatial awareness than like rolling dice or building a deck or what have you.
But it's like space planning and stuff, right? Like
yeah, and you have like, and there's a timer on it, how long you have to like pick your articles, and then you have to like put it together in time.
Nice.
So it's just a really unique game, but it's also like it's low lift, easily accessible, and I think people really gravitate to like the cute games that feel like wholesome or whimsical, because that's kind of the space of Short Rest Club. Like we'll have tea and cookies and board games and people knitting. Like it's a very nice time.
That's incredible. Yeah. So to shift it a little bit, one thing I was thinking, just because you have stuff strewn about the table here as well, is a lot of people who are into board games, and specifically queer people who are into board games, are also neurodivergent in some way. So there's a big draw towards like tactile things. And so, you know, either things that you need to fidget with those pieces, or like you feel this uncontrollable urge to put the pieces in your mouth. and so
don't eat the dice.
No, like,
it looks like a gummy.
They look delicious, but you know, you need to show some restraint. That's sometimes the hardest part of gaming. But I'm gonna say, which game would you say has like the best pieces, or the most ones that are appealing either to touch or theoretical taste or whatever? Like,
I have an immediate answer.
Amazing.
It is a game called Lost Ruins of Ardak. It has a million pieces, and almost all of them are little gems that look like gummies. And every time that I play it, I'm like, this is just a snack.
That's so funny.
Like, I had a feeling that you would both have.
Yeah, there's this game called Istanbul, and it's got those same, like, I think it's the same little types of shapes. Like, there are these little red crystals, and I'm like, oh, that looks like a gummy. Like, and actually, funny story, when you asked the first question of like your favorite game, like growing up as a kid, my actual first response, and was a certain game I'm about to name. But I wasn't sure. I'm like, is that technically a board game? But it was Hungry Hungry Hippos. My sister and I played really cutthroat Hungry Hungry Hippos. She was older than I was, would often win a little bit faster on that trigger. So my answer to her always winning was I grabbed marbles and I ate them. And I was like, I'm the hungriest hippo.
You became hippo.
I became hippo. Don't know what happened to those marbles. I have no memory of the aftermath of that, but I ate 3 marbles because I was so frustrated playing Hungry Hippos. So sometimes they are a snack.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
I don't endorse eating marbles. Please don't.
No. Oh. Yeah. I didn't know if I was going to talk about this or not, but actually, to bring it back to Hungry Hungry Hippos, is I actually just because there's a hint of a threat of legal action. So when I go into this, just if one of you wants to help me out, and if there's like a gap, I'm pausing. Just throw in the word like allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
It's like, if you could help me out with that, and I'll go into the story. Is a while ago I wanted to do a bit of a reboot of Hungry Hungry Hippos as a comic book. And I'm like, this is like a gritty reimagining, because I wanted to set it in like
I'm in.
I'm sold.
I want to have like a Cold War, class war type of setting. So the idea was, in my head, it was going to be Hungry, and the second Hungry was going to be like the country Hungry Hippos. But I was just going to call it Hungry, which I thought was really edgy and cool. And
nice, solid one-word title.
Right?
Yeah, so good.
Right? I like it because it would just be so gritty and so edgy. And so the idea was that like it was a parallel Earth where hippos actually followed a similar evolutionary line to humans. So they were able to walk upright, and they had developed language and all these things, but they had kept it secret because they didn't trust humans.
I'm picturing the hippos from Fantasia.
Not too far off, I'd say. And then eventually, like it was like the mid 70s, they get found out and they get discovered. And the governments of the countries where they live in, they're scared, like, we don't know what these hippos are capable. Like, hippos already kill a bunch of people every year, and now that we know that they have thought and they can communicate with each other, we don't really want them here. But it's also the height of the Cold War. So Hungary offers like amnesty to them to try and bring them, because like, these are going to be skilled, like strong laborers. They can like till the soil and they can do all of these things. And so like, yeah, come here. Like, this is like basically like a sanctuary. Like, you all should come here. But then once they do, the Hungarian government changes the currency to marbles.
Oh.
Which, as we all know, are powerful hallucinogens to hippos.
Oh.
So they're basically turning the population into addicts, and they're basically working for drugs. And they all are either like dependent on those jobs, or they have to turn to dealing to support their families. So there's all these things, and then there's about like the uprising of the working class and overthrowing the ruling class and stuff like that. Like, which is, I thought was interesting, because it's already, in a communist system where that allegedly happened, and it's supposed to be for the working people, but it's not. There's this underclass that they've created, and then that underclass comes up. So I'm like, I thought this would be a fun little story, and I'm just like, it's going to be a locally printed comic, and it's going to sell like 12 copies, but I'm like, I'll still say, like, hey, I think this is a fun idea, and I got a very strongly worded letter back.
So how did the letter come about?
Well, I saw it to be a courtesy, because it's not my IP. Like,
yeah.
Like, I'm just like, hey, it's inspired by this.
They weren't inspired by your communist hippo story.
I thought it would be great.
I would agree and let it.
Yeah.
It was frustrating, because I'm just like, I thought this was going to stamp it, like, yeah, this doesn't bother us in any way. This isn't like property theft. This isn't like intellectual property theft or anything like that. But yeah, they were not a fan. So, and it started just from like, I have hungry hippos at home, and I just was looking at the board game one day, and I pictured in my head like this, hippos looking haggard after a long day of work in the mines, like pulling mine carts and stuff like that. And he like hangs up a tattered jacket on the wall, and then like his wife goes up to him. He's like, Miklos, how can you expect this family to live on 4 marbles a day? And then I sort of developed that into the story, but it's just like, and also, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I can't.
No, I'm enraptured.
This is deep lore.
Yeah, you're getting some Allison lore here.
Yeah.
So, another thing is I like making my own games as well, and I did make a variation called Hungry Scrabbles. Which is, it would be like, you'd play Scrabble and you'd have like bonus spaces on there, and if you spelled a word that used one of the bonus spaces, you would go into the bonus round, which is Hungry Hippos. and then if say like Sylvia and I are playing, and like you get the bonus space, then we go to the game, and if you win, there's a points multiplier for your word.
Okay.
If I win, you get 0 points for that word.
Ooh, that really raises the stakes of Scrabble.
Yeah.
It does, right? Like it's because like you finally use all those high value letters and stuff like that. You pull out
And you could lose it all to a hippo.
Exactly, and like, yeah. So
Very cool.
So have either of you made like hybrid games or anything like that?
At most, I've turned Red Dragon into a real drinking game.
Nice.
At most.
Yeah, I haven't. I've always had like so many ideas in my head, just swimming around in my head about like cool games to make, and none of them are solid enough to like put onto like a physical, like make it into like a physical game. I just have a lot of ideas always.
I've had a few friends that have made games, and I love being a game tester. I love figuring out a game. I like being able to try and like test the like limits of the rules of a game. So I love game testing for newer indie games.
Nice.
But I haven't even had like ideas for them. I'm so overwhelmed with the stack of board games that I've bought that I haven't played or something, or games that I want to try. Like my Board Game Geek wish list is so long.
I can imagine, yeah.
That it's like I can't even think about making something. I have to play everything first.
Yeah, I've some friends that I forget exactly what they called it, but for simplicity's sake, we'll call it time Risk. So they had 3 different versions of Risk. So they had like the one that's like the one that's set in the future and the one that's set in present day, and they had Lord of the Rings Risk. And they had these separate pieces that were like time commanders, so you could take troops back and forth through time.
Nice.
And things you did in like Lord of the Rings version would affect things in present day version. And so there's all these like repercussions from whatever you're doing in the
very
timeline.
cool.
And it was like, it sounded really complicated. Like it was. It was like, it was such a long game to play because Risk can already take a while.
Can indeed.
And it had a very dense rule book. And I'm like, that's neat. I just made a new version of Jenga to teach people about Magellan. But
You sure did.
I love Majenga, though. It was a great game.
That's amazing.
So just wondering, I want to ask both of you here, would you say there's a game that you would say is kind of like the gayest or the queerest game? Like, it doesn't have to be explicitly so, but like gives you the vibes, or it's like, oh yeah, this really connects here. And I'm just wondering if either of you have something that kind of fits that bill.
Yeah, I feel like the gayest game is like the Stardew Valley board game.
Oh,
I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Like we do enjoy the
nice.
Stardew Valley game.
Yeah. Stardew Valley
Tell
is
us
just
about it, though.
already like a very gay video game, and so then when you play the board game, it's just that but a board game. Yeah, I've played it with so many people, and the people that it's like a hit the hardest for is like it is like the queer people that I've played it with have just like really gotten something out of it. I remember specifically there was one time where we were playing it and we all collectively decided that Harvey was going to be our like the like husband of our polycule.
Yeah.
And
Good choice, by the way.
yeah, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just like it's Stardew Valley. It's very queer.
Yeah.
Totally.
Fair. I don't think we need to go into that too much.
Yeah, right?
And it's a great game.
And it's a great
The
game.
board game, especially the second edition, is wonderful.
So good.
Also great game components. It's very fun.
First off, so are key differences between first and second edition? Anything?
I think
noteworthy,
they
or?
changed some of the game components and just like the way they put the game together in the box for like sorting and organizing. They made kind of like nicer components.
Ooh, yes.
And I think they tweaked some of the rules because I think it was quite challenging in the first edition.
It's a hard game.
It's hard.
Yeah.
The second edition's still hard. But I think they tweaked some rules because I think it was pretty punishing, which like Stardew Valley is meant to be
not
a
what
little
you're
bit
looking
lower
for
stakes.
in a Stardew
Yeah.
Valley game. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because
really
like
good.
the gameplay of the board game mimics the gameplay of the video game so well.
Yeah, like every
Yeah.
aspect of the video game you can engage with in a board game, which I'm so impressed that they fit that all in a box.
Yeah. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So Sylvia, do you have an answer to the queerest board game?
I do. My answer is Wingspan. Because all of like
Try not to clap too close to the microphone. I have to applaud that.
I feel like that is a game that either like any like basically queer femme knows way too much about birds and loves birds.
Guilty. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like that game usually like hits the hardest with a bunch of like queer femmes.
Yeah. I know a queer femme who the first time that it played the game just like was like weeping with joy by the end of it.
Well,
just
there's,
so happy.
There's like the little eggs in the bird feeder, and
Yeah.
come on.
Oh, the
Like,
bird feeder is the greatest.
It's
Talk
so-
about other good game components.
Oh.
It's so nice. Like rolling the food in the dice tower is so nice. And then also just like the bird facts. And there's
I
an
love a
app.
bird fact.
Well, and there's an app you can get on your phone called Wing Song, and you can scan the card and it'll play that bird's song for you. So you can actually like research the birds while you're
I
playing.
love that so much.
And-
I'm like Wing Song. You said.
Yeah, Wing Song is the app. It's free, and if you have Wingspan, you can just like check out different bird
Amazing. Like,
songs.
even if you're not playing, you can just like hang out and like scan
just
some
go
cards
through
and be
them, and if you have all the expansions, you'll be there forever.
like, amazing. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know. That's the game that like really slaps with like lesbian bird watchers.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
yeah. There's,
And designed by a woman, which is really cool, Elizabeth Hargraves. And it's gone on to have like other iterations of the game. It's like I think one of Stonemaier, the publisher's like most successful games. And there is there's a board game like championship in Las Vegas. I think it's a few years in, and there will be certain games that will be like tournament style, and you can win like a Super Bowl ring for the game. So like one of my friends, they love Wingspan, and they're like, I want a Wingspan ring so badly.
How sick would that be?
And so I was like, how can we like coach you? And we'll all go to like our board game group. We'll all go to Vegas, and I'll have like a towel, and I'll wipe your brow and
just get in there.
Get that bird. Finish that habitat.
That's so great.
Yeah.
But like that's I think that's actually an excellent point about like, you know, like queer femmes, like cis, trans, whatever, like we like birds. Like I remember a while ago there was like a bird themed drag show, and the venue was packed because it was like, we want to see like queer bird drag, like this is incredible.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so yeah, Wingspan is really good, and it's iterations, but definitely Wingspan, all for the birds.
And you're mentioning like games specifically like made by women and propping that up and having that as like a selling point as well, right? And you know, I just wanted to ask both of you about sort of what that means. It's actually fairly easy, I feel, to seek out if you're looking specifically for like ones created by women, because they're usually credited right on the box, or ones they're, you know, created by Indigenous creators or from other cultures and stuff like that. And you can either talk about how that's happened or what you think the impact is, or just kind of what it means. I think that'd just be an interesting way to start off the conversation.
Yeah, I interact a lot with Indigenous made games. Working at Palmetto, that's like a big part of the mission of the business is to like highlight Indigenous made games. And so I think that this like push to create space for Indigenous game designers has made some really, really awesome games, and has taken some of the highlight off of game designers that are making Indigenous games kind of like not in a good way. There's a lot of games that use Indigenous themes that are made by non-Indigenous designers, and they will be like very pan-Indigenous and will like kind of misuse like Indigenous teachings and stuff. And so then we have awesome...
And generally kind of pretty like colonially minded as well, right?
Yeah, very, very much. And then so we have awesome Indigenous game designers, like Connor Alexander is the game designer for the board games Wolves as well as Nasi, and also the TTRPG Coyote and Crow, which are all like really, really heavily Indigenous themes, and designed by a Cherokee man down in the States. It's really, really awesome that we are seeing like a lot of Indigenous people making cool games like that.
And I say, especially when it comes to like Indigenous games and stuff like that, there's a lot of sort of like cultural reclamation as well, right? Because there's been so much systematic efforts to like erase them as a people. So it's nice to just get something that's just out into the culture that is informed through an Indigenous lens, right?
And like I like that you mentioned Coyote and Crow and Nasi, because I think Nasi lives in the Coyote and Crow universe, which is really cool, having a board game tie-in to a TTRPG, but also that the RPG is like an Indigenous future, which I really love. That it's not just historic, it's a future, there's technology, but it's all informed by Indigenous ideas and teachings. It's really cool.
And even the way that they tell the stories in Coyote and Crow is really awesome, because you're not seeing stories about like greed and strife. You're seeing stories about like spiritual imbalances in the world, and so you're going to go help a spirit. You're not going to just go into a cave to fight someone. It's like really like they like even with the way that they design the stories and the modules and stuff is really like informed by like Indigenous teachings and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it is really cool to put it through like a futuristic lens. Like I remember, I forget. I wish I remember who said it, but when they were talking about like, you know, like the influence of like, for example, like Black Panther, and they're like, oh yeah, no, Black people are in the future and we can have cool things. Like it's like there's so many things in the past context. And I remember even when I was a child, and this was sort of like, I think one of the first bits of my sort of awakening of like just being like a tolerant, chill person is that like so many times they were talking about First Nations people in the past tense, and it's like these were the people that were here, and this is what they did. And it's like I'm looking around, and like I was up in Clairview in the Northeast, and I'm like, a third of these kids in this classroom are Indigenous, and you're talking about them like their past tense. They're not here. Like, do they have a future according to you if you're not even acknowledging their present? And so it's really cool to see things through like a futuristic lens, but also like applying sort of the the values.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like it's do you have any more thoughts about like sort of how it's just like generally any sort of specific types of creators, so everyone's not just lining up to give money to all these like old white dudes?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how much like casual gamers pay attention to who the designer is. I think it's kind of more like hardcore intentional gamers. But I think the important thing is that like representation in all spaces matters, because it's also that idea of like, if I can see it, I can be it.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed watching that documentary called The Hobby.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was really holistic in its approach of like the board gaming ecosystem, all the way from like a really crusty old guy who works at a museum and he hates modern board games. He's like, if your manual is an inch thick, this is ridiculous. Get out of my face. I want to play. I just want to roll dice and move pawns, because he has this like old Mesopotamian game that he thinks is the pinnacle of gaming, and it's thousands of years old.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I have a copy of that.
Nice. That's very cool.
It was actually, it was, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it was one of the first ones that actually spread, because it spread along like trade groups, and it was a way that people could actually communicate without having the language for it, because it was easier to understand the game dynamics than it was to teach someone a new language.
Sure.
And the game was all about like mercantilism, so so you could use it as metaphor, as a learning tool, this game is about trading.
Right.
So this is how we can actually trade. If you understand this game,
these concepts,
we can work something out.
That's very cool.
Yeah, which is probably why I have such an attachment to it, because it's a simple game that was, actually a very early learning tool.
Totally. Yeah, that's cool. And then the documentary also spans to like a young Black woman who like plays a lot of board games, and then she designs her own, and she ends up pitching it to a publisher and getting it published and doing a Kickstarter and like making her own space. And she plays a lot of like war games, which are very like heavy strategy. So it's just really cool. Seeing like, if you can see it, you can be it. Having different mechanics and story types are really important, because a lot of board games are designed in a very like exponential, infinite growth, capitalist setting. But I think with more diversity amongst game designers, we're getting very different types of games, unique mechanics, unique themes, and I just think it's great to see.
And that's, I think, why there's been such an uptick in interest in gaming as well, is because it's not just approaching like the hyper capitalistic mindset. Like, it's something else. You can see yourself reflected in that a bit.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
And I find like often games that are designed by people from like marginalized communities, or that have marginalized identities, I guess. Often their games have themes outside of that, which I think is really fun. Like, I play a game that is designed by a local designer. Her name is, can I say her name?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Her name is Roberta Taylor.
And she's so
great.
great.
Awesome. She's so great.
Oh, yeah, you're not saying anything slanderous. You're saying
no. I'm
she's
saying
great
just
and
wonderful things.
You're a fan of her game.
Yeah, she's so
I think
wonderful.
she'd be okay if she watches this.
No, Roberta makes some amazing games. The specific one that I'm going to speak on is a game that would usually have really, really big, capitalist themes around it, which is called Creature Comforts. And the whole thing with Creature Comforts is that it's a worker placement game. You are a family of critters that are spending the year collecting different like comforts, like some of them are like
Already
food,
sold,
or like some of them can be just like fuzzy socks, and like there's all of these different comforts that you're collecting resources to then build the comforts, and then the comforts will like get you points depending on which ones you have, and like they'll like combo off of each other and stuff, like something that like games of this type are often really like capitalist in their approach, but in this one it's like
accumulation based, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is one where it's like, no, you're collecting resources to like have a comfortable winter with your little critter family.
I love it. It's so
What
wholesome.
would go best with this hot cocoa?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's almost always soup.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like those kind of atypical games that also have like a little bit of a story component as well. Like even something like Gloom and its iterations can be very fun depending on like the people you're playing with, because it's not about gaining wealth. It's not about amassing anything. It's about telling a story about how unhappy your gothic family is. Yeah.
So, again, no easy way to transition this, but it's something I did want to talk about is we've hinted on it a bit before, is sort of how board games work as like a community building tool. And I would like to just have your thoughts on how it differs from like other community type tools, or why are people drawn to board games that might not be drawn to the other sort of, lack of a better term, like outreach or ideas that there are for people meeting each other and gathering, like what brings out the most introverted person who just wants their cave time to come out to something like a queer board game night as opposed to something else.
Yeah, I think that like especially for the queer community coming in and playing board games and stuff like that, so much of the like events and social things for the queer community either revolve around drinking or revolve around activism. And there's not a lot of stuff that revolves around just like having a fun time with your friends. And sometimes that's just what you need. So like we'll have the queer nights where everybody can come and we don't have to talk about the bad things that are happening in the queer community. We can just play fun games about cute little critters. And like that is, it's so good to be able to bond over something that isn't like a shared trauma almost.
And that's the thing is, with activism, like go out to a lot of things and there's a lot happening that to be activists about, but it's tiring and you need to recharge. And sometimes you just want to be with your people in the context of like not chanting something in a large group, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100% with what you've both said. And the aspect of, like I have a regular group, we play legacy games together. So those are games where there are like chapters and like irreparable actions that will happen. Like you are putting stickers over top of things. You are ripping up cards and they are gone forever.
My first time playing a legacy game, it gave me a lot of anxiety. I'm like, what do you mean I'm ripping up this card?
All of us were sitting around the table and we're like, who's going to rip the first card? And like we just couldn't decide. But it's become this like...
You have a dedicated nihilist in the corner.
The first legacy game we played, we kept everything in a separate box because we couldn't destroy it. And then at the end of the game, we were like, ha 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 ha.
That's actually super precious, and I love that.
Because we couldn't decide what to do about it. But what that group has become, like we've been playing legacy games for 2 years now, and it's become a space for each one of us to come together and kind of check our problems and issues at the door, so to speak. Like we play games because it's a legacy game. They're a little bit more challenging. They get incrementally more challenging as the game progresses. They typically like teach you the mechanics in the first chapter, but then mechanics will change and there'll be more elements you have to pay attention to. So they're pretty heavy strategy. And I find for each one of us around the table, that's like great mental escapism, where instead of like thinking about like our issues out in the world or things on the news or whatever, or stress at work or what have you, we can come together around this table. Our minds are still engaged because we're thinking heavy strategy, we're planning together, we're cooperating, but it's a form of like intellectual escapism in a sense, but you get to do it together. And I think the social aspect of board games is so important, and that I think it's a good avenue, especially for folks of varying neurodiversity. I think it can be very satisfying for the quote unquote spicy brain. And especially, being able to do it together and have like a shared activity that's not just like hanging out, which is great, but also having like an activity.
Hang, but like a focused hang is great. Like
a structured hangout.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think like I've only played a few legacy games. I do really like them, but I like that also when you sort of reconvene for the next thing, like there's always like kind of a recap you have to do, so it kind of gets you in that mindset. So if you have other worries or concerns, you're like, no, because I have to pay attention to this recap. What happened last game, and what are the repercussions from that? Right? Like it's
totally.
So it's kind of like you're getting your briefing before the game even starts. Be like, this is where you are. Remember, we did this thing.
Yeah.
And then I think also because, like, when you're playing it, like, I don't know, if it's something that you play like 10 to 12 times or however it is, but then it's also something to look forward to and plan around, which I found is, if you're struggling with depression or mental health concerns, sometimes even just having a little thing to look forward is nice.
Having like a social obligation where it's like, even if you are struggling with some mental health stuff, that like there's no expectations of you beyond let's just play.
Yeah.
Like, and having, like, I'm obsessed with play. I think it's a really important part of being a human. And I think it's things that a lot of quote unquote adults like remove from their lives, which I think is really unfortunate, because I think play is a great space for like healing and expression and like the joy that comes from playing a board game with people, especially when something like, again, our legacy game, it's high stakes. So because you're like, again, 12 sessions invested in something, and that like, again, those irreparable changes, if you fail, your game changes forever. It's really exciting to be a part of. It's like being a part of a sports game or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think that's a great way to say it, was the importance of play, and just like sometimes knowing that you have something joyful to look forward to.
Absolutely.
You're gathering with your people and you're continuing something that you've already sank time and effort into, and you've got enjoyment. So like, okay, it's session 6 of playing this game, and I've had fun the other 5 times. So it's like things are gloomy, things are trash outside, but I'm like, okay, this is gonna be all right.
I got this thing.
At least for a few hours, I know next Tuesday things are gonna be all right for a bit.
Yeah.
And there's something I think so powerful about that, especially when, I don't know, a lot of people in the community can feel a little besieged at times, right?
Yeah, besieged and isolated. And then you have this thing that makes you feel less alone, but you still get to engage with like your brain, but you don't have to be solving a real world problem. You can be solving this fictional problem and still getting that experience of feeling like, I'm obsessed with movies. I watch hundreds of movies a year, but sometimes like something just a little bit more engaging. Again, something tactile and fun with friends is so important.
Yeah, spending time with friends, but also wanting to put things in your mouth.
Yeah. Eating the delicious jelly-looking game pieces.
And so like I had other questions I wanted to ask, but I think that's a great way to kind of start to wrap it. Is just the importance of joy in the community, and that kind of brings this all together, I think. So I think that's a fairly natural place to call it. But I will, I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to, if there's anything you just want to say, like unprompted, if you have any thoughts that you want to get into, maybe we didn't get a chance to get into, just things like, oh, I have this thought, I think this would be cool, mention that. So we can go to that. And if you have any, I don't know, if you want to plug your socials or anything, feel free, no obligation, but give that option. So is there anything that you're kind of hoping to talk about?
Just that, I guess for social handles, it'd be great if you are interested in gaming to follow at QueerJoyYeg on Instagram. We also have a website, queerjoyyeg.ca, where we post our events and stuff.
Amazing events too.
Yeah, and there's a wide range of them. We do a bookstore crawl, which is like my baby, and it's my favorite thing in the entire world.
I love the bookstore crawl.
It's so great. A bunch of queers on bicycles buying books. It's so nice. But then we also do occasionally throw some like good parties, but we try to make those as low barrier barrier as possible so it can be a space for everyone to experience that joy of like going out for a party. And yeah, so we do all kinds of events, but then we do sponsor a queer night at Pametaway, which is awesome on Thursday nights. So I really encourage people to check out the queer nights at Pametaway. They're really fun. And if you're at all like socially anxious about doing that, it's a really nice group of people. If you're brand new and look lost, someone will talk to you and invite you to play a game. Everyone that plays games there is really like a gentle teacher and really kind. So I can't say enough good things about it.
That's an
and if
excellent
you're
way to
looking
sell
for if you're looking for a gaming group, which can be hard, for us that maybe if you spend a lot of time online and you need to go outside and touch some dice, Pametaway is a great place to do that.
You know what? We have a big tub of community dice. It is a great tub to dip your hands into. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No.
It's not touch grass, touch dice.
Touch dice.
Touch dice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No. Pametaway's social stuff is Pametaway Games on Instagram, on Facebook. There's also like a Discord server where we hang out and chat a little bit. Yeah, we have our queer nights on Thursdays. We have our general drop-ins on Saturdays. And it's just such a good time, always. It's for the queer nights specifically, it's also like there's no cost associated with it. Like, just come play games.
It's good because a lot of us are so broke.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And it's just the queer night we do that for.
Yeah. Nice. So any other final thoughts for either of you, or?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Just play games.
Well,
yeah.
Do you want to play
so
a
many.
game? Do you want to play a game?
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good indicator that we just kind of crushed it. So thank you so much to Kaia and Sylvia for being here with us. Again, I'm your host, Allison Hadley, for the Rainbow Connection podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at RainbowConPod. And I would normally like to plug what our next episode is, but this is the last episode of season 1, so...
Hey, congratulations!
Hooray. And we'll see you back for season 2, and we'll see what the future holds.
Amazing.